Tuft. I'm the extension educator for Poultry. I work with Wayne very often. I'm very happy to be partnering with Wayne for this series this summer. This is our second. We had one last month, and there were lots of questions actually about predators. So we wanted to be able to provide this webinar today to be able to give you some topics and things to think about knowing what kind of predators might be in your neighborhoods, whether you're in urban or suburban areas or even within city limits of rural Minnesota, and how you can reduce your bird loss to those predators and how to manage your bird system to keep those predators away and to prevent them from even coming for a visit. So with that, Wayne, I would like you to go ahead and get started. And okay. For those of you who are just joining us, go ahead and you can just enter any questions into the chat box. We will get to them towards the end of the webinar. If it's something very pressing with that specific topic that Wayne is currently talking about, I'll probably interject and offer that question at that point in time.
All right. Well, so again, for the people who just joined us, I'll introduce myself. I'm Wayne Martin. I'm with University of Minnesota Extension. I'm on the St. Paul campus that cover the state. And I do, my area is alternative livestock systems, so smaller scale and beginning farmers and urban backyard farmers. This is my contact information that I've got here on this introductory page. And certainly after today, if you want to contact me on any of the topics we're discussing, why, please feel free to do so. This is a list of common predators, creatures that like to eat chickens. So it includes mammals, reptiles, and birds. And you can see that just in looking at this list of dogs and coyotes and cats, including bobcats, foxes, raccoons, weasels, skunks, on and on. There's a long list of creatures that like to eat chicken, not just us. Now these creatures are pretty, I would say, evenly distributed around the country. Some more so in other areas. I would say that on this list, they've also, with the exception of bobcats, they have adapted themselves very well to human beings. And so whether you live in an urban setting or out in the country, you might quite frequently see coyotes, foxes, raccoons, etc. I live in Northeast Minneapolis, and I've seen coyotes running down the street. I've seen raccoons, smelled skunks. They're all around, and an occasional possum. So they are quite comfortable being around human beings. The first creature we'll look at is, of course, a raccoon. They're everywhere. They've adapted well to city living. And they come out and hunt at night, so that they are a nocturnal feeder. They can be really feisty for chickens. What they'll do is, if you have a cage with chicken coop wire, they'll come up and reach their paws through, and they can grab onto a bird and maybe pull feathers out, but not necessarily do damage. But if they're lucky and they grab the neck, they may pull the head out and then bite the head off. And then, of course, they won't be able to get the rest of the body, but they will continue killing until they're full, and they'll get several birds in one night, possibly. If they are able to somehow drag a bird out from underneath a hut, they may drag it away a little ways, but they're not big enough to carry a bird very far. So you may find the remains nearby. At red fox, they are, there we go. So they're a common creature as well, and they like to hunt in the evenings and in the very early morning. And they'll, there may be only a few feathers around, or you may hear the birds squawking as they're getting carried off. But they'll grab a bird and then take it back to their den or close to it. They are particularly a problem in the springtime because they've got little ones to feed, and so chickens are a convenient source of food. And they will kill extra birds just to store them, and so they'll have food to go back to. By the way, we have raccoons on the St. Paul campus, which is right in the middle of a major metro area between Minneapolis and St. Paul. On campus, we have foxes, raccoons, hawks, and coyotes. They're all an issue for us. So hawks, red-tailed hawk is probably the most common hawk predator of poultry. Other hawks will eat them too, but the red-tailed hawks are, first of all, quite numerous, and they're quite comfortable living in an urban setting or rural setting. And they hunt during the daytime, they have good eyesight. They kill with their long talons and tear up the creature that they're eating. They go for the breast meat and the organs. One time, so my office on campus is on the 3rd floor in the Animal Science Vet Med building. And out in front of it, there is a large cottonwood tree. And one time, a red-tailed hawk landed in it, and he had just caught a pigeon, and he immediately began to tear it open and eat the organ meats. And the vets told me that they do that because the organ meats are loaded with minerals. So we all sat there and watched him calmly eat. But I found this then the same thing to be true with our chickens in the field. I discovered this bird in the photo on the left with much of the breast meat gone. And as you can see, the abdominal cavity opened up and the internal organs gone. And he had very neatly placed the digestive tract in a pile off to the side. So he was a delicate eater, so to speak. Very neatly placed there. Hawks continuously harass the huts that we have birds in. And you can see that there is a photo right there of a bird. I was inside the hut working with the birds, and he landed and just sat there and looked at me. They harass the huts continuously because they have over time figured out that if they get the birds to panic, the birds may actually try to break out of the hut. And of course, then if they get out of the hut, then they nail them and they've got a meal. So of course, if the birds would stay calm and just stay inside, they would be safe. But they are chickens after all. And so they lose to the predators. And so of course, out in the field, there may be low spots, and then that will create a gap as we move the huts on a daily basis. It'll create a little low spot where the birds can get out. And then they nail them. So here's another example of a bird that had been escaped from the hut. And we don't have very many escape, but there's always a few that do, particularly when they're smaller. So anyway, this bird had escaped, and it was, I walked up to it, looked at it, and just kind of assumed it was dead because much of the breast meat was gone. But in fact, the bird was still alive. And so I had to euthanize it right away. But that just shows you, that nature can indeed be cruel. To imagine being eaten alive. We have a few owls on campus, but I don't think they have been a real problem for us. They hunt at night, And if they had a chance to get a bird, they may eat the head off of a bird. They will eat small prey, try to eat the whole thing. They like rodents, of course, but they'll remove the head, and they may or may not carry off the bird. It depends on how big it is. But they are an aggressive and very skilled hunter. But on campus, I think that we have lost very few birds to owls. Skunks like chicken, and they do like chicken eggs. So they're a threat for laying hens or little chicks as well. They are nocturnal. If you happen to live in an urban setting and you have your huts, close to a home, you'll smell the skunk most likely, know that it's in the neighborhood, because they do smell, and the smell can travel a long ways. Humans can detect it for up to 3 miles distance. And you don't want to go out and harass a skunk, because if you get sprayed, it's really hard to wash it off. And it could even cause temporary blindness. So you need to be careful in dealing with skunks. But the thing you need to do is just make sure that your hut is secure as possible. So they tend to just kind of suck the liquid out of an egg, open it up. Coyotes, we have coyotes on campus. We had, and they hunt throughout the day. They're just really active all the time. We had the huts out by some apartment buildings at the very north edge of campus. And people told me that every evening at about sunset, coyotes would come out of the woods and walk around the huts and try to scare the chickens out. And occasionally they would, and I would find maybe just a pile of feathers left behind as they, grabbed the bird, got it under control, and then carried it off. The birds, other than a pile of feathers, they were gone. Now, some people who are doing pasture-raised birds will, and choose to let them run free, will fence off the chickens with electric fencing. And that does work. That keeps the coyotes away pretty well. They are agile, though. They can jump a fence if they need to, but chances are if they get zapped once by it, they may stay away from it. Weasels. Weasels, we are very lucky in that we have never had an attack by a weasel. The weasels are scattered throughout the United States, but we don't seem to have them in our area. And so we've been really lucky, because I don't know what we would do if we begin to have frequent attacks by weasels. The reason being that they are such a voracious predator, and they can get through a tiny hole, even as small as 1/4 of an inch in diameter, which to me is amazing. But they not only can go through the tiniest hole, but when they get in, they just go wild, and they kill just for the fun of killing. And so I've seen reports of people losing 50 birds or more in one night to weasels. And they're active day and night, winter and summer. They don't hibernate, but they are feisty little creatures, and they burn up a lot of calories, so they need to eat a lot, and which is another reason why they are such active hunters, but also they just do kill. People have talked about them losing a tremendous number of birds. And thankfully, that is not an issue for us on campus. Possums, night hunters, I know they're around, but we haven't had a particular issue with them on campus. They tend to kill and eat one at a time. They like both the meat and eggs. Possum are very slow moving creatures, and they do kind of play dead. Many years ago when I was on the farm, I thought I had killed a possum. And so I picked it up and I was carrying it back to the pickup, and I happened to look down at it, and it was just on the verge of very, very slowly moving up on the verge of biting my hand. So I dropped it and let it go. So snakes, these can be hard to discover that you've got a problem with them just simply because they tend to swallow their prey whole. They'll eat a small chick or a bigger one, and they love eggs, so they'll eat eggs by a whole egg, no problem. And they also can get through a relatively small hole, but then they also need to be able to get back out of it. Once they've eaten, they may not be able to get through it. And they have no problem. I've got just a short video here I wanted to show you. And I'm not going to run the whole thing. And I hope that your bandwidth can take this. But anyway, here we go. Just watching a snake try to inhale that egg. And so it makes me think that, first of all, it can breathe through its nose really well. So it has no problem with sinuses, no hay fever or allergies or anything like that. So it's doing just fine, and it takes a really long time. But anyway, we'll quit with that and go on. Cats also like chicken. They'll eat chicks and they will eat eggs. And I know that when I was a kid on the farm, some nights cats would find a way to get into the chicken house and eat eggs. And that did not go over well. And so both wild cats and domestic house cats will eat eggs and chickens. And dogs, man's best friend is not necessarily chicken's best friend. They will eat chickens just for the fun of it, or they'll kill them for the fun of it. They may not even eat them. But the nature of a dog is that if something starts to run, they're going to chase it. And so at first it's fun, and then if they get a little taste of blood in their mouth, then they can go wild, and they can kill quite a bunch of birds in a very short time. So this is something that we hope doesn't happen, but it does more often than we realize. You can't necessarily trust your farm dog or your house dog with chickens in the backyard. Don't assume they're going to be always friendly. So how to reduce predation? This is a tough one always. It's a never-ending battle, and I don't think you will ever have a perfect situation. You're always going to, if you have birds outside, giving them access to the outdoors, you're probably going to lose a few birds every once in a while. But certainly, it's worthwhile if you have space, to put them in portable huts. Just that you can move on a daily basis or however often you need to, because that will protect them, especially during the daytime, from predators such as coyotes or hawks in particular in an urban area. One thing that's important to do as well is to wrap a hut that you have birds in with, if you have, let's say you've built a portable hut and you have the front and back open covered with chicken coop wire, that isn't enough. You can put the chicken coop wire at the top, but the lower 24 inches or more should be hardware cloth, which you can get at any hardware store, Home Depot, Fleet Farm, Menards, they all have it. And it's just very fine mesh, heavy duty, and nothing can get through it. So hawk can't reach through it because hawks will, like a raccoon reaching through, a hawk will reach through with its beak and grab onto flesh, and they will they'll damage a bird. And I've seen birds that we've had to euthanize because they were missing large chunks of flesh from their body because of a hawk reaching through and grabbing them. The same with a raccoon grabbing onto a bird and pulling out feathers or maybe pulling the head off. They won't do it through hardware cloth, and I can't emphasize that enough. So also make sure you have the hut, whether it's portable or permanent, you make sure that you have the top completely enclosed. If you have animals in a permanent hut and then have windows open, put a screen over the window because a hawk or an owl will come in. A raccoon or a weasel can climb up quite easily and go through the window, open window, and get birds. So make sure that you cover all of the spaces, close them in. Keep the hut frame as close to the ground as possible. Try to eliminate gaps. And of course, if you're raising large numbers of birds and you're moving huts on a daily basis out in a field, you can see that that's going to be difficult just simply because the ground is uneven and there may be gaps that at least when the birds are a little younger, they can get out, or possibly a creature can get in. But always do your best to make sure that you've covered those gaps as best you can. If you have them out free ranging or free ranging near a hut, you can put electric fence around it. And that definitely keeps the ground predators away, like coyotes, foxes, and dogs. Won't stop the hawks though. If the birds are in say an urban setting and you have them in a run right next to the hut, make sure that the run is covered because a hawk could land in it quite easily and fly out of it carrying a bird. So make sure it's covered. And it can be worthwhile, depending on where you live, to bury hardware cloth or chicken coop wire in the ground around the perimeter of your backyard setting in order to keep creatures out, because coyotes or foxes will try to dig through. Certainly in our field setting on campus, we have had birds, we've had a creature, whether it was a coyote or a fox, try to dig its way into underneath one of the huts. We've had a couple occasions where we found places where animals have tried to dig in, but our birds are on a field of Dutch clover and it's really thick. And so they give up. It's just not worth digging in it. So these are some methods you can use in order to try to control predation. You know, nothing is going to be 100% unless you just have the birds completely enclosed in a hut all of the time.
Wayne, there is one question that they would like clarified. Are you referring to electro netting or electric fence?
Electric netting, yes, that's a better term, electric netting. Because that's flexible and easy to move. So that as you move your birds across a field, you can use electric netting and move it on a daily basis or however often is needed as well. It's important to remember that the birds also do sometimes, they're omnivores as well, chickens, and so they do strike back when they can, and they will eat a snake or a mouse. And so I included this just to have a look. This little hen is having great fun carrying around a mouse that she grabbed somewhere. And she spends, time just trying to chop it up. And this is often, it's quite funny to see birds, when they know that one bird has it, others will try to grab at it, and they chase each other and tear up the little creature gradually, and then they all get a bite. But anyway, she's having great fun with it. But they do like to eat little creatures like that because it's a great source of protein, and birds, chickens are omnivores. Then, actually, here's one of a hawk getting payback for being in a hut with turkeys. And this shows the aftermath, but he got beat up. He's very unhappy and more than willing to go home and maybe switch to a vegetarian diet. You can see right there that he's got a bump on his head. So a lady came in and saved him and then set him free. So that's it at this time. And so for more information, I got some of this from extension.org. And that's a nationwide extension website. We also have information about this at, you can contact the poultry team at University of Minnesota at this website as well. So I'm open to questions at this point. How are we doing?
It is 12:33, so we've definitely got adequate time for any questions. I am going to leave you on mute for now. So if you do have any questions for Wayne or want to bring up a discussion topic, go ahead and please type that into the chat box. As a reminder, this is being recorded. We will put it on the Extension Poultry YouTube channel by the end of next week. It does take some time to process the closed captions that we are required to edit before we publicly post that. So if you want to rewatch it, if you want to share it with friends, it will be available by the end of next week on our YouTube channel. We do have one question that asks, what size hardware cloth do you recommend in the bottom 24 inches? Like a 1/2 inch square weave or a 1/4 inch? What's your recommendation, Wayne?
I'm not, I can't say for sure which one I have. I use it so routinely, but it's a 1/2 inch or less. So okay. It would, a 1/2 inch or a 1/4 inch, either one would be fine, but a 1/2 inch would be really tough for anything to get through, except possibly a weasel. So maybe you go with the 1/4 inch.
There's a comment of whatever's on sale.
Yeah, whatever's on sale, that works too. But any of that would be better than chicken coop wire because, again, chicken coop wire is just too big. You can put that at the top because ground creatures are not going to be trying to get through at the top anyway. And it would keep, owls or hawks out. But you really need it to download or protect the birds because they will sit close to the fence, to the hardware cloth or the chicken coop wire in the evening, and then they're caught unaware when a predator grabs them through the chicken coop wire. It occurred to me as well, something that I should have added to this list. We don't think about it as a predator, but in a way it really is at this time of year. And depending on the year and the general region of the country, gnats can be a real problem. Last year in Minnesota and in Iowa, buffalo gnats were a tremendous problem. They're also called black flies. And they will swarm around a bird and can cause anemia and cause the bird to die from anemia or even to die from anaphylactic shock because they release some sort of a toxin that can go into the bloodstream and kill a bird. But actually, another thing they'll do is swarm onto a bird so heavily, and they'll go into the nostrils, the nasal cavity, and the birds will suffocate. So it's truly a miserable experience for the birds. And they seem to be worse in the morning, early morning, and in the evening. So during those times, if you can, have your birds closed up. And the gnat season only lasts a short period of time, but it can cause a real problem during the period that gnats are active. And I've seen reports of, in particular last year, when we had so much rain, I think that contributed to a higher population of gnats. And so in Minnesota and Iowa, there were reports of people losing 50 birds to gnats. So they are something.
There's a question here about, will air movement help the gnats?
Yes.
In my experience, we've had very, very gusty days the last 5 days. And just even on my horse farm, the gnats are greatly, greatly reduced. So I'm wondering, as far as like the wind speed, like a fan in your coop, would that be enough to keep some of the gnat numbers down, or do we need to rely on these 16-mile-an-hour gusty days?
Well, I think, in a hut, you would want the fan blowing directly on the birds, because you want to keep the gnats away from them. So if it was indirect air circulating, it wouldn't do much good. It would have to be right on the birds. But yeah, any breeze at all helps, because they don't like flying around in the wind. Now, some people, apparently for humans, DEET doesn't help. Supposedly vanilla does. I've seen reports of people using vanilla. Now, whether it really works or not, I don't know. And I suppose you could spray your birds with vanilla to give it a try, but I can't guarantee that it would work. But it's something to, do your best with at this time, and recognize that they can actually be really dangerous for your birds.
Now, returning back to the fencing, what type of fence would you suggest after the bottom 24 inches of hardware cloth? Do you use chicken wire? And specifically, is the vinyl chicken wire acceptable for the upper section of the fence? Chicken coop wire is fine for the upper portion of a hut. And the vinyl would be fine, because vinyl coated, but that's an added expense. You wouldn't need to do that because the birds are not going to be up there anyway. They're not going to be bothering the chicken coop wire at the top. So the vinyl,
unless you have layers and you've put a roost in there for the layers.
Okay. So the vinyl might be for aesthetics, or
yeah.
I've heard from our neighbors that they're having troubles finding chicken wire between an increased interest in having poultry at home, and then also with the garden season. They've been having difficulties in the West Metro finding chicken wire at their local stores. So whatever you can find, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It's been a year of shortages of all sorts of things.
Yes.
And so definitely more and more people are getting into backyard chickens because of the COVID crisis.
Yep. And Lisa says it was very hard everywhere to find chicken wire, not just in the West Metro.
Yeah.
So going back, there was another question about protection animals like llamas. So I'm assuming, Bill, you are referring to using like a guard animal like llamas or a dog for the poultry. Wayne, do you have anything to speak on that? I know I have really wanted to look into that more with the dogs.
So I think some people have successfully trained dogs like the Anatolian to guard chickens. they're probably better with sheep and goats, those bigger animals, but I think it's possible to train them to be around birds and not harass them. The thing of it is, dogs like to chase something that runs, and so you would have to train them from the very time they were pups to get them to be really comfortable and leave the birds alone. Llamas and donkeys, probably they would keep, ground animals away like coyotes and dogs and foxes, most likely. But I don't think they would necessarily be able to bother a hawk or an owl that came at nighttime. So they might add a layer of protection, but then they're also adding a layer of cost to, you've got to feed the llama, you've got to feed the donkey. So they can be guard animals, but they come at a cost as well. Now, some people will have, for example, guinea hens. Guinea hens they're really alert all the time, and they watch for all kinds of predators, and they make a tremendous amount of noise. So you probably wouldn't want them in a urban backyard setting, but in a pasture, guinea hens might be very helpful in terms of at least alerting the birds that there is danger nearby, in particular a hawk.
Previously, I was thinking about guinea hens earlier because there was a comment about having possums around are very valuable because they love to eat ticks. And guinea hens are good at the bugs and the ticks also.
Yeah.
However, encouraging possums with other livestock species on property, so this isn't necessarily pertaining to backyard urban settings or city limits. Possums can carry diseases that are transmissible to other livestock animals. So there's a pro and a con to having possums around. Obviously, none of us really want ticks around, but I agree. So it's just a matter of understanding your situation and what might be at risk and what's not at risk.
Well, and they would be fine maybe for larger animals, but if you ever decided them to have chickens, you could have a real problem with the possum population bothering chickens.
There's a comment about using vanilla. Marianne says she was suggested to use a vanilla scented car air freshener, like the trees. And she's been using one of those and haven't had a problem with them. It doesn't necessarily say that they're working. So Marianne, give us some input
give us some more details.
You feel they are working or doing well. She's in the Duluth Superior area.
I've heard of citronella as well, but I don't know. It's just, again, an anecdotal kind of information. I can't say that it absolutely works.
Good questions, everybody. Keep questions and any discussion topics rolling in. We do have some time yet, and we're happy to answer any of your questions while we still have the time. If you do have to go, we understand. We've been on Zoom meetings for 3.5 months now, so we get it if you want to go. But thank you to those of you that are still joining us. Any other questions from any of you?
Or comments about what people have used for predator control.
Marianne says she has hung several of them on the top of her fencing and has not had a problem with gnats this year.
So it's on fencing around a yard or pasture. So it's not in her hut, it's actually outside.
The run. Yep, the fencing of the run.
Okay.
Yep.
So there you go. It can work.
Yeah, and those are relatively inexpensive rather than buying like pure vanilla extract or any like essential oils. The tree car air fresheners are pretty inexpensive. Bill asks about, what about urine? So what about urine, Bill? Are you questioning like keeping it clean or urine being an attractant for bugs? I've noticed the black flies love horse urine, soiled bedding. They do really love that, but of course that's horses. Oh, they've poured urine on the outside of the fencing to keep predators out.
Mm-hmm.
May I ask what type of urine?
Yeah.
Human urine.
Yeah, I don't know if that would be effective at marking a territory or not compared to, say, dog urine. I mean, I don't think they necessarily have great fear of us, so they don't consider us as, interfering with our territory. I mean, they want to avoid us, but they can do that by sight.
Marianne, you're funny. She says they live in the country and her other half will urinate around the coop outside to ward off the foxes.
Has it worked so far, huh?
And Bill says the same thing. But we'll talk about anything here. But, if it is anecdotal and we think it works.
What
Yeah.
the heck?
Yep. Growing up, I remember my mom as a master gardener wanting to put human hair. So when we would get our hair cut, she would put human hair around the hostas to keep the slugs away,
Mm-hmm.
I think, or beer. So, who knows what what all works and what doesn't work.
Beer works for slugs, that's for sure.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah. No, the urine might work. It might be enough to just say this territory is protected and stay away. Interesting.
Agreed. Are there other questions or other comments?
So I guess in general, has anybody else had trouble with gnats this spring? They're starting to get really bad outside. I know when I work outside in the evening, there are gnats everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And they really love the shade.
Yeah. All righty.
Lisa says she's not had gnat problems. It's those. Nope, that's Marianne. Never mind. So Lisa has not had problems, but there's been a nice breeze. Yes.
It's been windy. That helps. Yeah.
Yes. The wind has really been beneficial for some aspects of our lives. Yeah.
All right.
I think marigolds naturally have citronella in them, Lisa writes. So maybe planting them near and around a coop might be a good idea, so you can landscape at the same time. Yep.
That could work.
Fantastic. Well, for those of you, Wayne, do you have another slide that has your contact information on it?
Oh, let's see. I think I've got one more. It's all the way at the beginning.
Okay.
I can go
we'll leave that there
right
for
there.
a little while. Yep. If you have any questions, certainly connect with Wayne. My contact information is available on the confirmation emails you would have received to log into the webinar. So certainly reach out, send us any questions you might have. Also, if you have any burning questions about other topics with your small or backyard flocks, please send them our way. We are happy to do these types of webinars for you and to have a brown bag lunch and learn while we're all working from home yet. And we are looking forward to bringing you another webinar in July, and keep track of our Facebook page and the extension website on topics and dates that might occur. And thanks for joining us. Have a great day, everybody.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.